Written and directed by Matthew Ninnabar. We are talking A Night's War, and this one stars presumably his brother Jeremy Ninnabar and also Kristen Caster. Now, Matthew Ninnabar actually directed the movie Death Valley, which also starred Jeremy Ninnabar and Kristen Caster a couple of years ago, and that was kind of an action sci-fi horror movie very akin to the video game series Resident Evil. Now, A Night's War, I would say, is akin to another video game in many ways, without being an official adaptation. So, A Night's War, what's it all about? Well, it's a kind of fantasy sword and sorcery style movie, you probably guess. And it follows a knight called Bodhi. Strange name for a knight, but let's go with it. And he is following a prophecy where there is a woman with red hair who cannot be burnt, who will be the kind of the saviour of mankind. And he crosses over into a kind of dark demon dimension to try and bring her out of it and kind of fulfill this prophecy. And when he is there, he's given a magical amulet that actually gives him multiple lives, so he can die and come back, and it's called the Amulet of 100 Lives or something. So I presume it's 100 lives. They don't specify it's exactly that, but we can make that assumption. Anyway, he meets this woman Avalon, and they kind of are at odds to a large degree, both trapped in this hell dimension, and he begins to suspect that she may not be the saviour of mankind after all, and starts having doubts about the prophecy, all while having to deal with a variety of challenges and demonic entities. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while, I have to say. I'd seen some still images. I don't really watch trailers, to be honest, because I like to kind of go into these movies pretty fresh. But I'd seen a few kind of stills and things like that, and I thought, do you know what, I'm a huge fan of the sword and sorcery genre, and movies like Excalibur and Hearts of Armour, kind of knight-based, you know, movies like that, I really do enjoy. So I was quite keen to kind of look at a full-plated knight action movie. And visually speaking, this movie is incredible. Especially when you have to consider this is not a mainstream movie, this is a relatively low budget movie, but it looks absolutely scrumptious. Let's delve into a little bit of more detail in regards to that. So one of the things I think Matthew Ninnabar's strength as a director is having an eye for the visual and making, you know, the scenes feel somewhat dynamic, juxtaposed with the background, location, lighting. Very keen eye for visual direction, I would say. And the movie, again, considering it's a low-budget movie, I think it's very, very well shot. A mixture of, you know, internal sort of studio sets and stuff, along with some kind of external shots in this kind of snowy wilderness. I think it really looks very, very stunning to look at. And I've got to say as well, to add to just the technical elements here, things like the kind of the costuming, the kind of the set design, production design in general, looks great. I mean, it's very, very cool looking, like knight in armour film basically, and it has elements of this kind of like this kind of epic quest style kind of video game sort of style series, and that the fact that it's obviously you have this story device where this guy is basically able to die a bunch of times. It leads to some sort of fun death sequences, some quite gory sequences, some that are played for more sort of a comedic relief. You know, so that was all sort of pretty good in regards to some fun, neat ideas. We get some cool villains. I think my favourites were probably the first kind of like demons that they come across were these two witch sisters that really do give them problems, I have to say, and that was a good, very kind of extended sequence. And again, it's very, very stylistic. You know, it looks cool. These creature designs look great. They look scary. They look intimidating, and the way they're directed, I think, is solid as well. So it's all quite fun, very sort of, as I say, fantasy turned up to the 11, with great visuals and sort of an interesting storyline. But the storyline is maybe where I think the problems start. As much as I kind of like the visual stylings of this movie, I feel the story is not the strongest. And especially true, I think there needs to be more setup in this film. You're kind of thrown into it with very little idea of the problem. There's lots of exposition given to you, and I feel you kind of don't quite get where the story is going initially, because it's such a small amount of setup in this film. You get straight into this kind of hell dimension without really being introduced to the world at large or characters. Or more of an organic way of setting up the kind of the status quo about what's actually happening. And as such, I feel that kind of the story suffers because of that. I actually think it would have behooved this movie to have a little bit more setup, and maybe we could have cut down some elements later on in the movie where I feel maybe the pacing slows down a little bit and becomes a little bit repetitive, I have to say. So the story is the weaker part for me. It needed more setup, and as I've said, I think as we go into this hell dimension, as fun and visually exciting as it is, it's sort of a kind of rinse and repeat, to be honest with you, where we have a variety of sequences that are quite similar to one another. And as much as I like the visual stylings of the kind of like these sister witches, that sequence goes on for way too long. And you feel, for example, we have another kind of like horned demon creature towards the end, which is kind of over too quickly. So I think this movie has some pacing issues, and the storytelling is maybe Matthew Ninabar's weaker point, whilst his visual directing I think is the stronger. However, the other issue I think this movie has is some of the acting is quite poor. Now he's obviously cast his brother, and he obviously has a relationship with the actress who plays Avalon, but I gotta be honest with you, I don't think they're particularly strong actors. It's not helped. Some of the dialogue is a little bit too modern at times, and it kind of switches from trying to be kind of like more of your classic sort of fantasy style dialogue to more modern kind of like sensibilities, and sometimes the dialogue ends up being a bit hokey, and then the delivery of it by the actors, whilst it's not laughably bad acting, it comes across as stilted and quite cheesy at times. There are a couple of, as much as I do like the production design, there is a couple of elements here that I do think again suffers from a little bit of a low budget as well. So now, story is a big part of what I think makes the movie, how engaged you are in this one. And I think that the movie does kind of rally a little bit in regards to the story and the relationship between these Bodhi and Avalon as the film progresses, but it takes a while to get there, and the movie needed to have a little bit more of a consistent through line. So how to rate this one? I think the story is the weaker part, along with the kind of some of the acting, but it's so strong visually. As long as you don't mind a lower budget movie, it's so strong. I will give this movie a 6 out of 10 because I do think this movie looks fantastic. It's not the most engaging movie, I'll say that, but I do think, you know, visually speaking, it's really all you could ask for. But I would implore the Ninabar to maybe go off someone else's script for the next movie. Have you seen it? Would you see it based on what I've told you? Please let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.